Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your Chief Security Fanatic here, and today is Sunday, so we are doing Breaches of the Week. And before I begin, as always, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me a lot of this information. That would be Jason Dance, Barrett Peterson, Jill Anderson, and Jack Sorensen. Thank you so very much. And if you have a tip for me, please send it my way and I'll give you a shout out here and also on my nationally syndicated radio show, No Time to Lose. With that, we are going to start with a company called CTARS, C-T-A-R-S. They are the makers of a cloud-based client management system. They got hit on May 15 and found that data posted, was posted to the dark web a week later. Quote, this data includes documents containing our personal information relating to our customers and their clients and I'm guessing careers, because that's misspelled, and that is a direct copy and paste. Now, CTARS says that it holds personal information of clients, staff, carers, I guess that's twice now for that word, and third-party suppliers. And this is coming out of Australia, so maybe carers means something in Australia, because the first one to declare a breach was the Australian National Disability Insurance Scheme. So heads up, if you use the NDIS in Australia, your data may be out there. Moving on, let's head on over to the UK and talk about their National Health Service, because basically part of a 6-month attack is what they are part of. Email accounts on NHS's Microsoft 365 were compromised, resulting in over 1,100 targeted email attacks used to basically obtain credentials against them. This is a credential harvesting attack. Now, according to security researchers at email protection vendor Inky, the 139 compromised NHS accounts were being misused from October of last year till March of this year as the cornerstone of further phishing attacks attempted to basically either harvest credentials to major online platforms or trick victims into providing banking details. So heads up to you, if you have a mailbox with the NHS, meaning you work for them, you best make sure that what you're answering is actually legitimate. Moving on, we have to talk about manufacturing giant Foxconn. They make everything from the iPhone to HP products and everybody in between. They're huge. They just confirmed that they had a production plant in Tijuana, Mexico, that was impacted by a ransomware attack in late May. The Lockbit ransomware gang is claiming responsibility for this attack and announced that they will release all of the stolen data on June 11th if the company does not pay the ransom. That's all I know, but heads up, Foxconn anything. Moving on, let's talk about eye care. This is out of Australia. The personal details of almost 200,000 injured workers were mistakenly shared with 587 employers and insurance brokers in a major data privacy breach, basically by the state's insurer, eye care, and this happened last month. Now, eye care contacted the affected workers to let them know that this mistake was due to human error, and here we are. So if you have anything to do with eye care in Australia, that's the letter eye care. Heads up. Moving on, let's talk about Horizon Actuarial Services. Quote, a group claiming to have stolen copies of personal data from its computer servers is the name of the game here. I don't have much more than that, but what we do know is that the first one to announce they had a data breach was SAG-AFTRA. That is the Screen Actors Guild. No idea what AFTRA stands for. I think it's like for producers or something. Basically, they are saying their personal information of their members, including social security numbers and birth dates, were exposed. So heads up, if you're a member of SAG-AFTRA, you better check in. And actually, if your company uses Horizon Actuarial Services, you definitely want to check in as well. Moving on, let's talk about East Tennessee Children's Hospital. They are facing a lawsuit after plaintiffs said that their data basically is at risk due to a data breach that they had back in March of 2022. I actually reported on that when I went and looked. Now, the lawsuit claims that the hospital was negligent in how it handled the data breach. It claimed that the ETCH learned, basically that's the East Tennessee Children's Hospital, learned about the data breach on March 14th, but did not publicly acknowledge it until May 19, which is interesting because I actually reported on that. So this basically, the information at risk includes names, addresses, dates of birth, health insurance information, and social security numbers, according to the lawsuit. So while they may not have declared, apparently everybody caught wind of it because obviously I found it when I go looking every week for breaches of the week. There you go. Moving on, let's talk about Medicare. Maybe? We're not sure about this one, but this is the only information I could find on this. Medicare has issued new cards and numbers to some people in the villages due to a data breach. Now, due to the large number of Medicare recipients, the villages is a focal point for possible fraud. Now, the letter that Medicare sent out does not indicate the problem with old cards, but a Medicare employee confirmed that the action was taken due to a data breach, and that's all I know. If you didn't know, the villages is the largest retirement community in the United States. States, sitting in sunny Florida. So obviously they are ripe for being targeted for all kinds of scams and frauds and all of that. But heads up, we may be seeing a larger Medicare data breach being reported on that, quite frankly, here we go. But if you live in the villages, you might want to check in. Moving on. Let's talk about the city of Portland, Oregon. A cybersecurity breach at the city led to a fraudulent $1.4 million basically being lost using city funds. According to the city of Portland, officials said this incident happened in late April, and it was discovered after the city flagged another fraudulent financial transaction attempt from the same account on May 17. Now, according to the city, preliminary evidence indicates that an unauthorized outside person or entity gained access to the city of Portland, a city of Portland email account. And here we are. So heads up to you, City of Portland, and I guess your taxpayers. Moving on. Let's talk about the digital pharmacy known as Capsule. They recently fired a notice with the federal government confirming that the company experienced what they are calling a hacking/IT incident. While the details are still forthcoming, they confirmed that the personal data of as many as 24,486 consumers was leaked. They filed on May 27th of this year. Heads up if you use Capsule, the digital pharmacy. Moving on, let's talk about EMC, National Life Company. They reported that they experienced a data breach that impacted 288,288 individuals. 288, there you go. Now, according to the EMC National Life, basically the breach resulted in full names as well as one or more of the following being compromised: Social Security numbers, tax IDs, driver's license numbers, financial account information, payment card information, dates of birth, and medical information. So if you use EMC National Life Company, you definitely want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about D&H Company. They operate a chain of convenience stores throughout the Southeast United States. They reported a data breach resulting in the financial information of 35,239 individuals being compromised. According to the Dodge's store, which I believe is what they run, the breach resulted in names, bank account numbers, and debit and credit card information being available to an unauthorized user. So if you've used Dodge's stores somewhere in the Southeast United States, you might want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about the Kansas Cooperative Association. They're reporting a data breach to various state governments stemming from a September 9 of last year cybersecurity incident. Basically, we don't know what's happening on this other than they declaring a breach. They declared on May 19, sending out letters. That's it. But if you have anything to do with the Kansas Cooperative Association, you might want to check in. Moving on, let's talk about Shutterfly. This is the huge photo printing place. In March of this year, Shutterfly sent out data breach notifications to roughly 1,400 employees following a ransomware attack. More recently, though, Shutterfly filed additional documents with various state governments indicating that the number of employees affected by this breach may be higher than they initially believed. According to the most recent filings, Shutterfly's breach appears to have resulted in the following types of data being compromised: name, address, social security, government-issued ID, financial information, medical information, and healthcare information as well. Definitely want to make sure to check in if you're an employee of Shutterfly. Moving on, let's talk about the Albany Bank and Trust Company. Basically, that's obviously out of Albany, New York. I have to imagine that's where they are. They recently confirmed a data breach. Now, again, the details on this one are still outstanding. This is a brand new one, but they are already saying names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and other information may be compromised. So if you work for or use Albany Bank and Trust Co., definitely give them a call. You never like to see banks get hit. Moving on, let's talk about Psychological Assessment Resources, Inc. They reported a data breach after an unauthorized user gained access to a legacy database, basically containing sensitive customer or consumer data. Now, according to basically them, the breach resulted in names, addresses, social security numbers of affected parties being compromised. So we'll see what's going on. But if you use Psychological Assessment Resources, not associates, Psychological Assessment Resources for all of your psychological needs, check in. And finally, and we have two finalists for you today. This was a little bit of a shorter week, interestingly enough, but hey, I'm not complaining if there's less breaches out there. Moving on. We need to talk about basically fast food coffee giant in Canada, Tim Hortons, because seriously, the people who run this company, I mean, what a bunch of hosers. Here's what's going on. From May 2019 through August of 2020, the mobile app published by multinational restaurant chain Tim Hortons surveilled customers constantly by gathering their location data without valid consent, according to a Canadian government investigation. Now, in a report published this past Wednesday, Office of the Privacy Commissioner, or OPC, and the privacy commissioners from 3 provinces, Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec, presented the results of an inquiry that began shortly after the publication of a June 2020 National Post article. Obviously, the National Post broke this. The Canadian government went investigating. Now, that article revealed that the Tim Hortons app tracked location data every few minutes, even when relegated to the background, and the report compiled by the Canadian privacy officials confirmed this as well. Quote, "We found that in May 2019, Tim Hortons released updated versions of its app so that it could, with assistance from a U.S. third-party service provider, Radar, known as Radar, track and collect the location of users' devices," according to the OPC report. Obviously, they're going to go to a U.S.-based firm. We have very little privacy laws here, so why not? Tim Horton, come on down, join the meth lab right now that is America, because you're in the apartment living above it. Now, to continue, and I quote, "For the devices of users who provided their permission, Radar would, on behalf of Tim Hortons, collect and process the user's device location as often as every few minutes to 1. Infer the location of the user's home and place of work, and when they were traveling, 2. Identify when the user was visiting a Tim Hortons competitor." You walk into Starbucks, Tim Horton wants to know. Also, Tim Horton has 5,000 locations in 15 countries, began in Hamilton, Ontario as a burger restaurant and expanded in the chain to a chain to donut shops and all that in the 1990s. Now, the interesting part of this is that the article goes on to mention that basically Tim Hortons has some kind of tie, although it was not explicit, to both Burger King and Wendy's, meaning they could be a major franchise owner of either of those, or if this technology by Radar was integrated into the Burger King and Wendy's apps, which was referenced, Burger King and Wendy's apps, Burger King and Wendy's may have a similar issue. We're going to see where this goes, but obviously I think this is a huge thing. And talk about the reputational damage that these things cause. Do you want to use an app? Do you even want to go to Tim Hortons knowing that they are trying to track absolutely everything you do? Not to mention the millions of probably mostly Canadians, although apparently they're in 15 countries, that don't realize this is actually going on. And here we are. So we're going to see where this goes. But obviously, it's seriously not cool. But it's these kinds of things we need to keep in the forefront. So essentially, everybody starts to understand these and realize these things. And I think that is super important. So there you go. Here we are. Moving on. And the last finally we have for you today is Illuminate Education. This is a quick update on this, but I think this is actually an incredibly important one. If you recall, Illuminate Education is used by a ton of school districts out there, and now a ton of school districts have had to start declaring data breaches. Well, we have an update for you, not on more school districts, but on a big one, and it's an important one, and it spells doom for Illuminate Education. Here's what's going on. The New York City Department of Education, meaning the largest Department of Education in the entire country, is basically calling it quits with Illuminate, whose data breach impacted at least 820,000 of their public school kids. Now, school principals on Tuesday were told to cease using Illuminate Education, all of their products and services, at the end of this school year, according to a memo obtained by the New York Post. Now, this third-party vendor, which offers things like grades, attendance, messaging platforms, is widely used by all of the schools across the 5 boroughs of New York City. So this is obviously a very huge problem, and I think this really underscores why you need to have good cyber security and control. Illuminate Education is about to lose what I presume is their largest customer, the New York City School District. That is obviously a massive school district, and imagine when LA and Chicago and Houston and Dallas and Atlanta and all of them, if they're using it, start pulling out. What is the reputational damage to your brand, to your business, in hard and soft dollars when you have a data breach? How much are you going to lose in revenue? How many people are going to be laid off because you don't have good security control? Are you going to close your doors? We've literally seen that. So this is a huge thing, which is why it's the very last thing I'm talking about. You've got to make sure you've got good cyber hygiene in your life. The last thing you want to be is an Illuminate Education, and the last thing you want to do is lose your largest customer because you didn't spend a little bit more to secure your data in a better way. That is a lesson for all of us, and those were your breaches of the week. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP, and please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everyone.